you know, the
Calling to order the special council session of Wednesday, September 18th, 2024. Please call the roll.
Mr. Newell, Ms. Zatrak.
Here.
Ms. Welkman.
Here.
Ms. Godek. Here. Mr. Lemay. Mr. Gentili.
Here.
Dr. Wong.
Here.
Yeah, I'll report to council. I've received communication from both Mr. Newell and Mr. Lemay, and due to various health issues, some personal family things, neither of them can be with us this evening. So first thing we're going to do is pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first agenda item would be approval of the council minutes of August 21 and August 28th. Could we please have a motion regarding the minutes of August 21st?
Second.
Any discussion regarding those? Not hearing any, roll call for approval.
Ms. Zatrak.
Yes.
Ms. Welkman.
Yes.
Ms. Godek.
Yes.
Mr. Gentili.
Yes.
Dr. Wong.
Yes.
Next, the motion for approval of the August 28th minutes.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any, roll call, please.
Ms. Zatrak.
Yes.
Ms. Welkman.
Yes.
Ms. Godek.
Yes.
Mr. Gentili.
Abstain.
Dr. Wong.
Yes.
Here it is. I knew when I walked in this room, I had a pen in my pocket and it's recovered. Our next agenda item is Resolution 2024-33. Mr. Brzezinski, could you please take us through that?
Thank you, Mayor. This is just a housekeeping ordinance. We do it every year. The Budget Commission requires that all councils approve and accept the rates that will determine our real estate taxes for the next year. These are the rates that we currently have. They're basically asking, do we want to receive that money, that amount of money? So every year we bring it down and every year we pass it and it'll roll forward.
Okay. Any questions from Mr. Brzezinski regarding this?
No. The rates are the same, so there was nothing redlined on the document, right?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Anything further? Can we have a motion for the adoption of this resolution, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Ms. Zatrak.
Yes.
Ms. Welkman.
Yes.
Ms. Godek. Yes. Mr. Gentili.
Yes.
Dr. Wong.
Yes.
Next, we are bringing forward ordinance 2024-34 for first reading. So council understands, this was requested that we put on our three reading agenda for NOPEC to have this start a process to go on. They've asked to be able to appear to discuss it. They weren't available tonight. So we will hopefully be able to get them in next week, and we'll just carry this forward onto the agenda until they can come in and explain exactly what's going on with this and why they feel. They've asked all cities to look to it, who are NOPEC cities, to look to adopt this. So I suspect it has something to do with the events of, I forget now if it was last year or the year before, when there was, a very large spike in gas prices and electricity rates. And they actually very honorably released everyone from their contracts with NOPEC so that they could take advantage of some other lower pricing. They were locked into a contract at the time. I'm not certain that this is what it relates to, but there was a necessity for people to opt back in. And I think maybe, I'm suspecting they may have hit some sort of technical issue that they actually have to have legislation permitting people to opt back into their program. So I'm guessing truly about that, but so this is just on for first reading tonight. With all of your permission, unless you have other questions that I will not be able to answer, We'll move on to ordinance number 2024-35, which is an additional NOPEC ordinance regarding the same opt-in program. It deals with something else. Both of these ordinances are promulgated through NOPEC, and the law director and I are with you, waiting to hear their counsel is regarding what this is about. All right, so we will otherwise pass that on for first reading. Next, we come to a discussion on the awarding of the alternate path extension for the Gates Mills Boulevard multipurpose trail. Since our last meeting, I understand that there was a meeting with the MKSK representatives who designed the plan, Mr. Sheehy, and members of our beautification committee, as well as Ms. Weltman and Mr. Gentili. So if one of you want.
I think that's
not
next.
I think that's the next item.
This is, I believe, the extension of the walkway.
Oh. Everything I said, remember what I said.
But not
Because
members
but
of the
we're
committee.
going to talk about what I said on number 7. You know what,
Council
we could skip it for a second if you want,
You wanna
and
do
and just move right on to the motion to accept the bid. Why don't we do that, since it's all there already? So we're going to talk about number 7. We're going to change our agenda a little bit to accept the bid of El Cacho and Sons Landscaping, Inc. to perform the Gates Mills Boulevard Landscape Improvement Project. I apologize that I got ahead of myself as to what was going on here. They both said Gates Mills and I jumped. Do one of the council people who were at this meeting want to talk about this at all?
Yeah, I'm happy to. As you mentioned, Tony and I were asked to sit in and kind of start off an informal meeting between the community members, Rick Eichhoff and Susan Brownstein, along with Don Sheehy and the people from MKSK, Susie Maurer, and Cullen also came in later. Thank you to Don for being a part of this. It was really, I thought, a fantastic meeting. So first of all, if any of you don't know, we're really fortunate to have Rick Eichhoff and Susan Brownstein on this committee. They both have a tremendous amount of subject matter knowledge. Just listening to them was quite amazing. And just a wealth of expertise. There were lots of thoughtful, detailed questions that were very specific, way over my level of questioning, actually, regarding plant materials, tree selections, and other plant selections, establishment of meadow plants, which was a very detailed and interesting conversation, various design elements, including stone and featured spots, and a pretty significant conversation about maintenance and maintenance of plants as installed too. Overall, it was very positive, and they were very complimentary of MKSK. They had some limited conclusions, kind of recommendations, which included having the Parks and Beautification Committee review the benches, maybe to perhaps see if we could find something that was a little bit more elevated. This wouldn't impact the project beginning or moving along, as this is a end piece of the project. MKSK was very amenable to helping with additional selections. Additionally, they had recommendations of, this actually isn't incorporated into the bid, and MKSK suggested that signage design might be a good piece to include in that effort for Parks and Beautification, working on the design style and possibly content. So if we did anything as far as an educational piece or a location piece, that it would be consistent and we would come up with a kind of a look for this park and possibly adjacent places. And finally, there was a strong emphasis on making sure that our team is well-versed in the requirements when we assume maintenance of the landscape, which if you look at the bid, the initial kind of establishment is included. But when we take over, for example, one part of it included the meadow plantings, making sure that they were tended to properly, so that it remained So that the kind of plantings that were there would flourish and not get taken over by invasive weeds and things like that. So this was a fantastic conversation, and I think it was a great way to establish a really collaborative relationship for future projects or extensions of this project. And it was really such valuable and collaborative work, and it was really kind of fun and nice to be able to sit back and watch. Tony and I didn't have a lot to add to the conversation. We had a few, introductions mostly in the beginning and then a few questions, but it was primarily watching this back and forth, which was fantastic. And I'm really proud to be a part of a community where we have people who are so talented and knowledgeable and at the same time willing to give their time to an effort like this. So it was great. And that was kind of the reporting, those three kind of caveats. And I don't know if Tony has anything to add.
I think Melanie hit all of the really high points, and I would have nothing to add to what she said. There were a couple other things, though, that were said that I'd like to just mention, and that Don assured us that that our service department is, kind of really into this stuff, and that they would be hitting the ground running when it was their turn to do the maintenance. They like that stuff. There are people in the crew who
That's
who
correct.
like
Yeah.
who like that, and they will dig right in and they'll know what to do. So that was very reassuring. And the last thing, or the only other thing I wanted to mention was that at the end of the meeting, I asked, without us saying anything, do you prefer this plan or that plan? And they said this plan, and this plan was the aspirational plan rather than the rudimentary plan or whatever that was called. So,
No, that's a really good point.
and
I
that
should
was
have added
and that was their independent assessment without any input from Don or from MKSK or from either of the council people present. So
That's wonderful. I'm so happy to hear that it was such a positive meeting.
That's
That's great.
It was fantastic. I mean, committee's lucky to have both of them. I witnessed it.
Okay. Don, you have anything more you want to?
I'll reemphasize that they were really impressed with the MKSK plan. So it was nice to get that affirmation from two outside people that, just had seen a little bit of the plan and were able to dive into it. I think they really liked the thoughtful way that native species were picked out and things that will be hardy and drought tolerant and deer resistant as much as they can possibly be in this area. We had a really healthy discussion. In my mind, based on all of the things that were said, the recommendation certainly from the group, although they don't vote here, the council people do, they seem to be very much in favor of doing the aspirational project. And I think the thought would be we would likely pull the bench selection out of this mix for now, especially if there's going to be some type of a look that's going to be established both for the Gates Mills Boulevard path now, maybe an extension in the future, and then maybe some other areas in the city that might have the same look. And it would make sense to maybe just revisit those. Right now, we're only talking about 3 benches, but we could stop those 3 benches from happening and pick that up with whatever theme or slight change or whatever is going to happen to that, the material or the color or the massing of it. I guess they were looking for something more sturdy or beefy or something was their terminology. What that exactly is, I don't know, but I think that process sort of can be independent of the big project. And that was really good discussion on that too.
Yeah, it was great discussion. And there's plenty of time to get that done as the project evolves. So
yeah,
it's not
those would be installed toward the end. And in terms of dollars, it's not a very significant part of the cost.
But the feedback that I had heard was just pulling back on those stipulations. Number one, thank you, Don, for being available. I was the one who arranged the meeting. Melanie, Tony, and of course, Susan and Rick. That was great that we were able to have that community input and collaboration on the project. I wish it could have happened sooner, but I'm just thankful that it was able to happen. So I think in order to move this forward, we pull out the benches. I think a stipulation regarding when it comes up, any of the signage, benches, and receptacles, that those are to go to the Parks and Beautification Committee for input and that collaborative process, whether it's with MKSK or just within the group, but for that process to happen there. I also heard something about a product called Tree Saver, and I think that it's important for us to discuss before we move forward with the landscape plan, that there's a product available that helps the plantings to thrive, and that it could be an additional cost. But, and Don, did you have any chance
Yeah,
to look into that or talk to the landscape
No,
architect about it?
I
Is it something we can?
I heard the
add?
discussion. I guess it's not a huge amount of money to buy that particular product,
Right.
but we do have a very detailed spec on the soil and quite a bit of testing for a number of factors.
Okay.
So I think we're pretty safe with what we have because of that soil composition. If we wanted to add something else, we could, but I don't want to. The contractor is committing to doing this work in a certain way,
Mhm.
and so I think we're okay with our spec as it stands right now. I wouldn't want to necessarily introduce a proprietary single source product. Typically, when we bid a public bid, everything is, even if we do spec something, you must use Windex or equal. It can't. I have to have that or equal piece of it.
Okay.
This is not a huge thing. If it's something that's worthwhile, our service department could probably buy it. It's and add it or something like that. But I don't want to necessarily tinker with the contract at this stage of the game. And I did not have a history with that particular product at this point.
Perhaps if, we're constantly doing tree grants and adding additional trees all over the place, it might be something we want to look into
Sure.
because supposedly the success of these plantings with this product is much higher. It would be worth.
It may be worth, it's
It might be
worth-
certainly worth the cost.
Yeah, and we'll look at it before we stick a tree in the ground.
Yeah.
What she may have been, I don't know the proprietary name of what they were dealing with. There is a product, because I've planted dozens and dozens of trees. There's a product that when you free up the root ball of trees or shrubbery, it's and you put in very lightly, it's a root stimulant, basically. It
Helps.
greatly enhances the establishment of the plant. And I'm thinking, listening to your description, it's that type of product. And we'll make sure that sort of thing goes in because
Sure.
it makes the plant much healthier.
Oh, absolutely. And allows them to establish sooner. So, okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Are we, let me just we're missing two of our members who I know are supporters of this project. Are you comfortable adopting this tonight, ladies and gentlemen? Okay. Then I will entertain a motion to accept the bid of El Caticchio and Sons Landscaping, Inc. to perform the Gates Mills improvement project with the
alternates.
alternate.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Atrop,
Yes.
Ms. Weltman,
Yes.
Ms. Godin,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili.
Yes.
Dr. Wallner.
Yes.
Well, that's exciting. Thank you. Next, let's refer back to item number 6 on our agenda, which is a discussion on awarding alternate path extension for the Gates Mills Boulevard Multipurpose Trail. This is, as council is familiar, this was part of the original bid spec that was distributed to you. We adopted to go ahead with the bid and held back on this alternate for later consideration. Since that time, I know council and I have received quite a bit of communication from residents on Ainsworth, as well as a few other streets who would want to take advantage of the alternate. Don, you want to take it just so that there's a public discussion of it? You want to describe the alternate to us again?
Yeah, we bid it. There's 2 alternates that we actually bid. One alternate would be to continue the same appearance as the Gates Mills Boulevard multi-purpose trail. So 10-foot wide asphalt path. It would run on the same side of Lander. Currently, it runs on Lander from the circle up to the entrance of Ursuline College. if we were to do the alternate, we would continue running that path all the way to the north entrance at Ursuline College.
That's the driveway that we enter for the Taste of Pepper.
Yeah, by the tennis courts up there.
Okay.
So that would be the end point. So it would essentially run, it's maybe 5 or 6 houses south of Cedar.
Okay,
And so we bid it one way. Okay, what would it cost to put it in essentially exactly like the multipurpose path? Then we also bid it, what would it cost to do it as the concrete trail, which would match the trail that's going in on Lander Road right now. So those two items were bid. The asphalt 10-foot wide versus the concrete 5 feet wide. The concrete 5 feet wide was actually about $27,000 more than doing it in the asphalt path. The entire thing doesn't have any other driveways on it because it is all across the Ursuline frontage. There's no other entrance. There's the south entrance and the north entrance, and that in-between section is just grass. So it's a pretty straightforward piece to do, and it could go in either way, either as a concrete or the asphalt. The price is not substantially different one way or the other. My recommendation, all things being equal, I'd probably prefer to see is go in as the 10-foot wide path, because if somebody's riding their bike, it would get to that spot and then they would be choked down to a 5-foot sidewalk.
the path would collapse.
You'd probably want to rather just loop the whole thing. And it ties into the campus there at Ursuline. It provides, an ADA access walkway for their campus and the residents on Ainsworth, and maybe people that, also people that live on Lander. So,
Mhm.
but that's either way, I think it's something that we should look at seriously. The reason that we didn't run it all the way out to Cedar is because we do have a handful of houses on that side. It's on Lander Road, and that would be an area where it'd be more difficult to put in a 10-foot path all the way out to Cedar that way. And also, once you get to that intersection, if you eat sidewalk or path, you have an interface there with the signal. So we don't have, the signal heads aren't set up for push buttons, ADA access on the signal. That's not even really our signal, it's Mayfield Heights'. I think that's kind of a separate project because we have to coordinate all that stuff and get it right. Because the last thing you want to do is lead people to a spot and then they have nowhere else to go.
But that would be north of the
That's
north
of-
driveway.
Right. So we don't have that in the project. I'm just pointing that piece out because that's sort of the next question. Why don't we go all the way to Cedar? So that last little bit, I would hold off on that until we have some type of collaborative plan with Mayfield Heights.
And that's also consistent with a lot of the other things we've done where we have lower density or you're leading to some, we have,
Right.
which is too busy of a street.
Technology is hard, Mr. Byron, it is hard.
So yeah, it
I
does
lost
change
my
the use. So I think, I think that's a good point. But I think to include the campus, it does give somebody who is walking or hiking or whatever, you could do a loop around the campus and come back out on the path one way.
Well, and that's what a lot of residents on Ainsworth actually express that they do.
Yeah.
So that's consistent with their practices, current
Yeah.
practice.
And it wouldn't run past the north driveway, like it would
would
end
stop.
before, like we wouldn't do that little bit extra that, okay.
No,
I want to
stop
make.
it. Your intersection is their north driveway that way. And that's
Okay,
where
and
somebody who's
that's-
walking, that's their next place is to walk around the campus. So.
Perfect. Is there, I'm just going to ask it, are there any opportunities if we were to go with the asphalt path to slim that at all? With it not technically being part of the Gates Mills project that we got grant dollars for,
Yeah.
could we just slim it, use the same material, but not make it 10 feet wide? Like, is there an opportunity for that since we're paying for it and the
Right.
state is not?
Right. I mean, purely from the engineering design standpoint, you don't like to give them an expectation of something, and then all of a sudden it gets narrower. So somebody's pushing a stroller or something and they feel very comfortable. Now all of a sudden they're less comfortable because somebody's riding a bike towards them the other way. And there's always those
That's going
transitions.
to happen along Lander on our concrete.
Right.
You're going to take a 5-foot path on Lander and come to the Gates Mills Trail. So you're going to have that size difference.
Correct.
And it
So
also
I'd argue that
happens-
it's not really an issue if
Yeah,
it
and
wasn't
it
an
also
issue there.
happens in Beechwood. You know, when we go to the Beechwood path on Shaker, their path is pretty much an 8-foot path. You know, it's not completely consistent. And even ours around the circle is a bit narrower. So I kind of had the same thought, just because it's in a residential area and it's so close to the street. If we could make it visually a little less impactful, I don't know.
Yeah, my recommendation would be to go with the safer path, but if you do decide, if the thought is that we want to make it narrower, we could. I just don't know that that 2 feet, you are really not going to notice the difference of it. It's not going to be like, oh wow, that looks so much better than it's only 8 feet wide. It's still going to be a wide path. It's still going to be the same material. You're not going to notice the difference, and it's not really going to save you any money because the contractor's got really almost the exact same
See, I
amount of
think
work.
visually you will notice difference. It's gonna look less like a road and more like a trail. And then I don't think you notice it on Gates Mills because you have this mass of land and a lot of grass. But and the Metro Parks trails aren't 10 feet either. I've been on.
Almost everyone that they've built in the past 15 years is at least 10 feet wide.
Well, I go to North Shore.
If you go to an old
telling
one,
everybody where I go.
the old ones, some of the old ones are not, but they do not put any new paths in other than 10 footers. I mean, I'm not.
And South
We
Shore
could
is
do it, but
wide.
you're going to have half of the Lander Road path trail will be 10 feet wide, and then some portion to the north of it would be 8. And I'm not sure that aesthetically you're going to say, oh wow, this feels great because they narrowed this down to 8. I think it's more important to think about talking to Ursuline and also planting trees in the right of way past the path,
Mhm.
doing those things, than worrying about whether the path is an extra foot or 2 wide. I think you're better off spending money on landscaping, and that's all you'll look at. You won't look at the path. You'll be looking at the nice trees.
I haven't talked to him really about path dimension. Ursuline College, though, is quite supportive of the idea of extending this between the driveways. I will share that with council.
I had a long conversation with Jim about this, and he has some strong feelings about it. So I would recommend maybe that we table it until next week. Hopefully
Yeah, we
Jim
can.
would be here. I don't think there's any urgency
No, that
to
would
do this, but I think that we should have everybody heard if we can.
yeah, Scott may
this.
be able to weigh in too.
Yeah, Scott, right. But I know that Jim has strong feelings. I don't know if Scott does or not. But
Yeah. Okay.
Jim should be heard.
All right,
on
Dan.
this.
Don, is that an issue for us?
I don't have, that's fine. My recommendation is that we really need to give the contractor guidance after the meeting next week, I would say, just because their mobilization and timing and all that stuff, they're looking at, this is a fall paving job. And
You're kicking off.
you don't want to wait another month to say, hey, mid-October, hey, can you do some more paths?
Okay.
Sure.
It will
I-
change your schedule.
I just have a couple more questions. So the contractor that we'll be using for the asphalt, they're also willing to lay the concrete. So it would be that same company. Can you remind me, are there any maintenance differences or preferences between doing a concrete sidewalk versus an asphalt path, and what that might look for us long-term along there?
They're both pretty durable.
Okay.
So concrete, typically what ends up happening long-term is you'll have a square or two will crack or whatever, or there's a tree root issue, and then you're going to do point repairs. You generally don't go in and replace all the concrete sidewalk. It's usually a long, 20, 30, 40 years from now, there will be spots where you've replaced some squares because you had something broke.
Mhm.
A tree fell on something, whatever. With asphalt, the ride quality, if you're riding something with wheels, a skateboard, a bicycle, it's much better than sidewalk. And maintenance-wise, you will have to, at some point, 25-ish years or so out, have a maintenance cycle where you need to do a resurfacing on it. It's not anywhere near as expensive as building the original path, but there will be some surface treatment needed. So periodically, once every, I would say 25-ish years, you're putting in some money to put a new surface on the asphalt pad. And you still might have some point repairs there too, where the gas line gets ripped up because they have to cross, some other utility work goes on and the path gets cut. Nothing like what happened in our circle, but
Hopefully never again.
hopefully ever again. But those are parts of the maintenance, I guess. Usually that's done by whoever disturbs it. But at some point, you would be in a cycle where you put a new surface over the whole thing. And that becomes really a ride quality, or, to make it smooth for pedestrians, pushing strollers, anything with wheels, and ADA access. It's a smoother ride.
Thank you
Don,
for that.
can you remind me, I don't remember this discussion of the alternates for this project, but why didn't we do it in the beginning with everything?
The grant took it up to that south entrance of Ursuline. And from a timing standpoint, we got our grant, but we were still in the discussion process about the expanding side, trails on other streets. So Lander Road was kind of still in the discussion phase when we were moving forward with the plans.
And then why did we pick 5 feet concrete for Lander versus 10 feet asphalt or 5 feet asphalt? Like, what was that? Is it easier
Well,
maintenance in the future for concrete? Like, why then on Lander?
I think they really have different levels of service. I mean, the 5-foot trail is primarily a walking trail. There will be people occasionally riding bikes on it, but it's not sort of the same level of service as the Gates Mills multi-purpose trail, where you will have regular bike riders.
Right.
Okay, so the 5-foot width, if you on Lander Road, if you went to a wider width, if you went to a 10-foot width, you could do that. However, from a design standpoint, it would be far more complicated because of all the driveways. The driveway crossings create a huge design issue. Everyone that you cross, the trail has to be relatively flat. So if a driveway is fairly steep, then you introduce a 10-foot wide piece that's flat in the middle of that driveway. You've got to tinker with a lot more of the driveway. The 5-foot wide is a smaller piece in the middle of that driveway, less tinkering around with the existing driveway. And this particular stretch happens to have 0 driveways. So that whole run between
But don't you have the Ursuline driveways?
the Ursuline driveways
Like 2?
they are asphalt
Right.
existing. So we actually don't have to touch them.
Right.
But the entire piece in between, there's not a single driveway on that side. So it could go in easily as an asphalt path. It could go in easily as a 5-foot concrete.
What if we did like from the first Ursuline driveway, a taper down to a 5-footer? Because most people who are asking about it are the residents of Ainsworth that are walkers and not bikers, and they're not expecting bikers to go down that. And I don't think we should encourage motorized vehicles or bikers on that stretch of Lander. So I personally would like to see it 5 foot. I don't care what it's made out of, but so that the walkers are safer walking there to get to the trail. So if there's any way we could consider that, I think that would be the best option.
Well, let me just respectfully point something out. Part of the design would be that people can come down the trail and enter on the campus into the southern driveway off of the trail.
Right.
They can circulate on the campus,
That's
and
fine.
that people on the campus can also, who've gotten onto them, can exit out of that north. So there's sort of a loop phenomenon there of being on the campus and coming out either end and being on the trail.
But it costs more money, right? A 10-foot wide pathway is more expensive than a 5-foot wide.
The
Correct?
concrete 5-foot wide walk is actually more expensive than the 10-foot.
Let's do an asphalt, let's say.
Well,
Asphalt
what-
5 feet versus 10 feet, it's more affordable to do
It's not a substantial cost difference because the way it gets built, you have to be, right now for our current path,
Mhm.
the contractor is building a 14-foot wide swath of stone below the path so they can drive their trucks and rollers and paver on what's going to be the path. So before it becomes the path, it has to be stable enough to get the equipment through there. So a 5-foot asphalt path is not really something that can easily be built. There aren't little miniature pavers out there that are going to put a 5-foot asphalt path in. So it will be concrete because that's really the only practical material when you get to be that narrow of a path. And it is the same cost as a 10-foot wide asphalt path. And we're back to the level of service. If you're trying to make something that's truly usable for bike riders and for people that are just trying to enjoy this path, runners that want to run on a smooth surface, you put it in at 10 feet or maybe 8 as a compromise. But I don't think you go down to 5. You're not going to. I can't tell this contractor put the path in at 5 feet wide, and you have to do it essentially at half the price. It won't be half the price because he can't do it.
I'm not talking about half price. I'm just talking about less price. And also maintenance costs in the future would be less for a 5-foot versus a 10-foot or 8. It needs to be narrower because it is a residential street. It's not the boulevard with 4 lanes on each side. And I worry that people are going to be taking their motorized bikes down there because it's 10 feet wide. And then,
If they
Yeah.
do, we pass an ordinance that says you can't ride your motorized bikes on the paths.
oh, well, why not? I mean, I'm on Beechwood all the time and there's motorized bikes that says no motorized vehicles. And it says 10 miles per hour and people are going 20 miles per hour. I mean, nobody follows the rules. We have no way to reinforce it. I think we shouldn't build it that wide because it's not part of the trail. It's really one of the other types of walkways, not a sidewalk, but a walkway for our residents to enjoy.
I think we need to focus on a couple of things. First of all, we've had 0 negative emails regarding this extension.
Right.
Overwhelming support.
I think we're all
From-
I
supportive.
think we're all supporting
Yeah,
that.
but right, from the residents of Ainsworth and the surrounding area, apparently from Ursuline, those are the people who are going to be most directly impacted by this visually and practically speaking. And I'm thinking if you have 2 sets of 2 people passing each other, give them 10 feet to do it. I guess you have contrary experiences in Beechwood with, motorized bikes or whatever, but every single person commented saying, we walk, we walk, we walk. We want to take our kids. We want to ride our bikes. So I don't think you want to compromise on the width at the expense of giving people a comfortable amount of space to freely move past each other, not have to step off or like maneuver around each other.
I didn't memorize all the emails that we got, but many of them were worded similarly.
Yeah,
And I don't remember any of them saying anything about the width.
no, but
So
why
that's-
would
but
I would imagine that.
But that's what we're discussing.
Right. I'm saying, why would they think that the width would be an issue, right? I'm trying to put my,
I think that they envision the width as 5 feet.
I
like
think
the-
they're
like the sidewalk on
envisioning a
Lander.
sidewalk. That's my concern.
That's what I
too.
think they envision it
Yeah.
as.
And-
I can't prove it, but nobody talked about width.
And
And
then
I think
all-
that they're seeing a 5-foot sidewalk on Lander, and it's going to be inconsistent. You have 5-foot sidewalk on Lander up to a certain point, and then all of a sudden you have a 10-foot
10-foot.
wide walkway.
it's consistent with the Gates Mills Boulevard Trail,
But
which
that's-
is what's looping
That-
around.
That's But actually what it attaches to. I think,
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, but the reality of it is this path, whatever this is, north of Ursuline is attached to a 10-foot wide path. So pedestrians, bike walkers, they're going to come up Gates Mills, and if they head north, they're going to be on a 10-foot wide path. And then all of a sudden, once they cross over the driveway, then they might go back down to a 5-foot. I don't know that it necessarily.
I do understand what you're
Okay.
saying.
I-
Well,
and
I just don't think any of it.
This is
should be
also
10 feet
quite
on
a
Lander.
huge grassy area. This is not going across anyone's lawn, driveways, etc. This is open space.
But it's across from people's houses and it's close to the street. And I do think people, and to say we're being inconsistent suddenly, we have concrete sidewalk right by
Exactly.
our playground right here. We cross over to like approximately an 8-foot path, not 8.5. And then we go into Beechwood where it is 8. And then this way we're going 10. So we are inconsistent all over the place. The key is, and I read all those emails too, and I'm very supportive of the people on Ainsworth and in that neighborhood getting this connectivity to the various walking options, because I think they will connect also if they want pretty easily to Lander. I mean, that's just the reality of how people will move through these pathways. And every single one of them said that they're a walker. I mean, that's what they were saying. And I like to walk through Ursuline, and I'm interested in walking. And so I guess I'm concerned, I guess what Tony said is surprising them with this really wide path right next to the street, because that's where it will be pretty darn close to the street. And it'll be visually, more than we need, and maybe a little bit unattractive. It's different when it's on the on Gates Mills Boulevard, where there's a lot. And I like your idea, Don, of adding trees and greenery at some point, but we'd have to decide how to do that. It'd be pretty close to the street. We might have issues with, I don't know if there are wires there. I don't know if there's visibility issues from those driveways.
Okay.
So we can't count on that.
All right,
I
I
have
think
a question about just how wide the right of way is in front of Ursuline, just to visualize it. How much room do we have in that right of way for the size path we're talking about, Don? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Okay, I mean, let me do the math here.
Or you could get back to us
No,
next week with that number.
Just give me a
Because we
second.
have-
Yeah, that's a good idea. We're going to be carrying this on next weekend.
Yeah, and I
So
think,
why don't I think everyone's weighed in to some extent
Yeah.
here now.
I think
Why don't we pass this next week, as Mr. Gentili suggested, and we'll regroup on this issue next week. Maybe we'll have more information, and we'll deal with it then.
Hopefully we'll have
Okay.
7.
more members.
But
Can I
it's going to have to be
ask that we-
concluded, just as Don has mentioned, though. We are going to have to conclude this next week because the contractor needs to finish his mobilization.
Is there a way to get a quote for a 5-foot asphalt path by next week? Would that be possible by
I
this
have-
contractor? Could we ask them, Don?
We can always ask.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know that that's possible.
I do have a question though. Don says there's a $25,000 difference, but I don't know what the top number is on either. So was that
It was-
provided?
Yeah, that's in the
it's in the-
bid.
yeah,
That You have that.
Don't quote me to the penny,
Well,
but it's 172 for the asphalt path and 198 for the concrete
recall that I
sidewalk.
missed last week's meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's in the bid document, though, that you have.
So Don, to that point, a 5-foot path is gonna be greater, we're gonna have to go out for competitive closed bids probably. Do the price. So there would be no way to have that number for next week. You can
Yeah.
come up with an estimate.
We would only have an estimate, and I don't know if it's, we would have to ask the contractor for a change order, and then you really only have a single person giving us the number for that. We have 2 alternates in there.
So,
We have, that's part of the reason why we bid it both ways.
You've got you have
We
a
have- we have a
5-foot
five-foot
alternate
walk
and a
and-
10-foot alternate.
and
You
we have a
have the
10-foot.
alternate.
I know, but
If
everybody knew how many of us felt about the path being too wide, and
Well, and
Especially
that's
near
why
the-
we bid it both ways, because
I
really, if you do an asphalt path.
It was
think
good to know, too.
that wide.
I know, but there's not sort of a middle ground of cutting it to like 8 feet or something like that, 7 feet.
Don, can you go over the estimate?
I do
Total
think it makes a difference.
Alternate 1, there's total alternate 2, there's total alternate, like there's 2. Oh, it's different contractors. Never mind.
Okay.
So A is asphalt, B is concrete. Is that what or 1 is asphalt and 2 is concrete?
Yes.
And it's 172, 523 for the asphalt,
Right.
10 feet, and 201, 860 for the concrete.
Correct.
Okay.
And I would, to that point,
But-
if you're gonna do, there is a visual expectation. So if you're going to go with a narrower path, I would recommend that you go to the 5-foot concrete walk, because then the bike rider isn't operating in what they thought was, they're not gonna be able to pick up from 10 to 8.
Don, can I ask you another thing?
Sure.
The contractor, Mark's Construction, was higher on the original bid, but their alternate one,
You can't pick and
and two.
choose. You can't give them the alternates, not the prime bid.
but now that we think we might do that, can we go out for a new bid for the 5-foot? Because the numbers are,
If you have a bidder that you've awarded the prime contract, and he is the low bidder, even if you add up all the alternates. So then you can't go back and say, well, we're going to pick and choose which piece you're going to do. If we award the alternates, we give it to our contractor that's doing the work now, and then they will get it done this year. If you don't want to do it, then we have another
There's a
contractor.
$60,000 price
You throw
difference.
those bids away for those alternates, and then you go back and you rebid as another contract. Because from a contractor standpoint, there's all sorts of means and methods about how they went about figuring how they want to do the alternate. And if you're only going to do that as a standalone contract, it's not fair to the low bidder or the second low to try to pick and choose different pieces. You have to rebid those items, and then you will get different prices than what you see there.
So how come we didn't bid this with the Lander people to extend the Lander pathway over there? While we were doing the Lander bids.
This council had me bid the Lander project only up to Gates Mills Boulevard. We did not.
But if
We
we
did
were
not-
thinking about extending it, why wouldn't we get numbers from them too? Anyway, we didn't, so.
All right, the conversation's past the next week. So far as committees and department heads, Tony, you want to report back on the Charter Commission meeting of earlier this week?
I do. Charter Commission met on Monday from 8 to about 9:40. A lot of the discussion was related to process rather than the charter itself and the provisions of the charter. The commission wanted to make sure that they had a path to follow, if you will. And so they spent probably an hour or more talking about that. They did, however, do something I thought was very helpful, and that's they set up their schedule for the meetings through November. And that's Monday, September 30th for any council people or any community members that are interested in attending. That's at 8:30 or 8 a.m. Monday, October 7th at 8 a.m. And then in order to accommodate people who are working, we're going to have Thursday evening meetings at 6 p.m. And the first one of those is October 17th. Then again on Monday, October 28th at 8 a.m. Thursday, November 7th at 6 p.m. And then Monday, November 18th at 8 a.m. And that's as far as they went.
December 2nd.
Pardon?
December 2nd.
December 2nd. Oh, yes, you're right. I'm sorry. December 2nd at 8 a.m. I guess that sums it up.
I think
Melanie, you were
that
there.
sums it up.
Yeah,
Rick, you were there for part of it, I think.
I was there until the last 5 minutes, so.
yeah,
that's about-
I think that pretty much you covered it, yeah.
No, good job. Thank you. I don't think we have any other committees that met since, did we? Planning didn't
There's
meet.
no
Planning and zoning.
Planning didn't meet
It
this
was
month.
canceled.
We had no applicants, that's what I was
Yeah.
canceled. The department heads. Anyone?
We hired one new officer, so that's good news. So
Thank you, chief.
That's exciting.
meeting soon for swearing him, maybe next month, and then we have a second one that's almost all the way through the process. So that'll take us to 18.
Exciting.
Okay, great. Thank you, chief. Anyone else?
I have a
Just-
question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, just
No,
real
go
quick, the Lander sidewalk or trail, the first our test section was poured or placed today. So there's about 150 feet of concrete that's out there curing right now. And I welcome people to take a look at it because we do need to let the contractor know if the color looks okay, because they're going to keep on pouring.
Does the color of now,
It's
is that
it's-
indicative of
it's-
what the color will be in a month?
It's dark. It's very dark right now because it is truly fresh concrete. But over the next 24 to 48 hours, it'll
They had nice weather for a pour though, so that was good.
they really did. Yeah, this has been an unbelievably great stretch for concrete guys. So
Yeah.
Can
Yeah.
you let us know when the next pour is? Because I think all of the council people want to put
Put
their.
our hands on it.
we'll save a little section somewhere for you guys.
We do not, let me say this publicly. We do not encourage or allow anyone to deface wet concrete.
Thank you. Did they put the curing compound on it? Because
It's on there.
it's on and they use the clear on that? Okay, I'll drive by tomorrow. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Don. Exciting news that we're away with that.
Don, when do they expect to be finished, or maybe without, or
Um,
estimate?
their plan is to be totally done by November 1. So, month and a half.
That's exciting news.
And while it's being built, people can't use it because it'll be blocked off, or how?
Yeah, as you may have noticed, they put little cones at every drive apron to try to keep people off. They will continue to do that because it's not complete. They don't want somebody to walk along and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
they come to a
Right.
part that's not done, or there's a
Right.
drive apron that hasn't been poured
Right.
yet.
All right, well, great. Thanks, Don.
Mhm.
We'll move on then to just some things I want to publicly point out. This coming Monday, we are going to have as a groundbreaking for the initiation of the Gates Mills Boulevard median multipurpose trail and park. That will be at 9:30 in the morning. It's going to be a modest affair. Nothing flashy. Maybe we'll have some donuts. But the idea is, I know there are some county and state officials who would like to join us for that, and that would be lovely. As council is aware, we have received some marvelous economic support from county, state, and federal dollars for this project. So we welcome that attendance and participation by
That's the 23rd.
Monday, the 23rd, right? 9:23 at 9:30 a.m.
I know we had discussed doing something that had more of a splash when we were finished. We're still going to do that, right?
Yeah,
So, okay,
yeah.
because I know council.
Yeah, this is a groundbreaking.
Okay, good.
I'll remind council that on October 1st, this has been on our calendar, I've discussed before, we will have our centennial dedication ceremonies. October 1st, of course, is the calendar date this year that marks the incorporation in 1924, of the then Pepper Pike Village, or Village of Pepper Pike, pardon me. We avoided being called the Village of Roland Hills earlier in the year through a failed election, and it became the Village of Pepper Pike. And you can all wait with bated breath, because when we wind up our Fun Fact Fridays, maybe you'll learn more about the name of Pepper Pike and its origins. So just a teaser there. We have been I was able to meet, if you're not aware, there was a news release about it, that Ursuline College has entered into a letter of intent to have a strategic partnership, is the way it's being described now, I believe, with Gannon University out of Erie, Pennsylvania. Gannon is a university of about 4,000 plus students. It has facilities in Erie and in Florida. And I got to meet the president and the leadership team of Gannon at Ursuline earlier this week. And all are very excited. This partnership has the full support of the Ursuline Mother House and its leadership. They of course sit on the board of Ursuline College. Gannon University, for those unfamiliar, is a Catholic university out of Erie. It will broaden the scope of offerings at Ursuline College. They have an engineering school, for example. Ursuline's very excited about this. There's a commitment. I've not seen the documents between the institutions, but I am told there's a commitment that Gannon fully intends to maintain the Ursuline campus and presence here in Pepper Pike, which is exciting. They want to continue the strong relationship between the college and the city and its residents. And that's all excellent news for us and for the stability of that northern quadrant of our city that's occupied by 60 plus acres of Ursuline College. So we have to view this as good news. It's Ursuline, again, I am told, was not in dramatic financial distress. However, this is very much a stabilizing effort by Ursuline to ensure the future of the college and its presence here. How it's branded in the future, I think that's part of the due diligence and ongoing discussions that will occur between Ursuline and Gannon University. But I think the value of that name and presence here is known, and Society Bank has survived as Key Bank. That's all I can say. So we'll see how it's branded in the future. And but for the time being, certainly Ursuline has made a dramatic move to sidestep the fate of other small liberal arts colleges such as Notre Dame, which closed down obviously a year plus ago. And this should be I think this has to be seen as a smart strategic play by Ursuline to have stabilized itself and to ensure its future. So congratulations to both parties in that transaction. As council is aware, our Architectural Board of Review has been operating without one of its third member for quite some time now. We re-advertised for applications. We received a number of them. I included all of the active members of the ABR in interviewing candidates for it. Next week, I will be bringing forward a nominee for consideration and hopefully approval by council. It's very important that we get this ABR back on its feet with a full contingent. The candidate is a registered architect who will join Hassan Gardezi, who is our current chair of the ABR, who is also a registered architect. This lady, let me get what her name is. Randy Beyer. Randy is a seasoned architect with Ross Bianco, RBA International Inc., a large Pittsburgh architectural firm. They do work throughout the country. It was the unanimous recommendation by the members of the ABR that Randy would be an outstanding member and contributor to their efforts as the ABR. So I have some more literature of Randy that I will be distributing to council for your consideration. And hopefully we will, if anyone wants to talk to her, feel free to do so. And we will be bringing her forward hopefully next week. The members of ABR, they have had to cancel some meetings because of a lack of a quorum, as they have, if one of them is missing from a meeting or two members, that is cascading and affecting our building department and more so our resident applicants who are trying to get their projects considered and moved along. So I beseech council to seriously consider this candidate as we go forward. I I think that's what I have tonight. Council, do you have any things you want to add to the conversation? We're going to move for the audience who is unaware, if you didn't pick up an agenda, to a brief executive session following this meeting tonight. Council?
I actually have a couple questions for Don,
Sure.
that I've gotten from residents. Do we have a timeline for the walkways for South Woodland and Shaker potentially? Is that something that's been set, or is it like sort of just floating out there?
It is something that's driven by council. actually.
Okay.
So
All right, so
we-
nothing.
I got authorization to do the one chunk of Lander, which we did up to Gates Mills,
Yeah.
and so that would be the next piece. So-
And would you recommend doing both at the same time next year, or with all the Shaker stuff going on, would it make sense to put that on pause until all the sewer projects are done there?
The Shaker, most of the connections are done, or pretty far along with the connections.
Okay.
So we did actually receive a grant from Regional Sewer District for a sewer on South Woodland between Lander and Brainerd.
Okay,
So we haven't, that's in the works. We
Yeah.
haven't gotten the formal acceptance of that grant, but that might put a pause on South Woodland sidewalk.
okay, so actually flip it, so like it might make sense to go for with
If
Shaker.
I was going to choose right now, I'd probably do Shaker next year.
Okay.
If we were going to do one of them, that would be the first.
Okay, and then also potentially connecting Lander down through the circle to connect into Orange. When would that make sense to start talking about?
I think you have to tackle the circle part first.
Yeah.
So that's the tough piece.
Yeah.
There's a lot of property owners around the perimeter there. There's a lot of gigantic driveways and
Right.
things like that. So that has always been the piece that needs to happen before you push the sidewalk further.
Like
south.
giant pedestrian bridge or something?
Yes. Moving sidewalk.
There you go.
It's a challenge. I mean, and that is a problem. You do have a lot of property owners that don't really want to give up their drive aprons, and some that are fine with it.
Okay,
But going south, depending on where you put it, there's a long stretch that you get to. Orange's walk doesn't go all the way north either.
right.
It stops at that subdivision.
So how much,
Orange.
yeah, I guess so how much
So
of
they
that?
have a
it's
pretty good chunk.
So part of that would have to be Orange,
A
bringing
pretty
their
big
sidewalk
chunk.
up.
yes,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
And the way the corp line is kind of crooked, so there's actually, depending on which side of the street it's on, it's a lot of sidewalk for one versus the
Okay. And I assume you have coordinated other projects between communities
do.
where
Yeah.
that's just something you do?
right. You would make
Okay.
sure that both
Yeah.
sides are on board before you.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
I wanted to talk just for a minute about the building department report that we received.
Yes.
We received a lot of raw data. Back when when we had our own department, there was a one-page summary that gave us information that was useful to council. I think that the raw data dump is not useful and that there's some work needs to be
Oh,
done.
you did not find that useful?
No.
What was the sense of the rest of council about that? Because I think the idea was to provide as much information as possible about what the activity in the building department was.
I don't mind seeing that also, but I think what Tony's asking for is better, particularly since, I was really taken aback when we found out that we were supposed to be sending fences to the ABR and we weren't, and they were getting permitted without that. So I would love like a more, like, kind of
Summary.
explanation in
summary.
the more narrative
I'm
perhaps.
gonna look through my old stuff and see if I could find that report. It was a very simple report with about a dozen numbers on it.
You're talking about more of a synopsis of the projects? I'm struggling to understand what you want edited out.
Let me see if I can find one of my old ones.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
Again, for example, the raw data, and I don't mind getting that in addition, because why not? But there was a huge miscellaneous category, and I didn't know what that meant. I know we talk about outbuildings and sheds, that wasn't really clear from this. It was hard for us to know what it meant.
I'm guessing miscellaneous are things like someone's having new wiring put in a bathroom and they pull permits and permits happen. And I don't think council really needs to get
No,
into
it's
that
not.
We
sort
shouldn't
of.
have to guess what
We
the
shouldn't have to
miscellaneous
guess.
means. Just
Because
say miscellaneous
Because I didn't
is
see
this.
anything that had to do without buildings and sheds, so I assumed that
There
that
was
might
one.
be clumped in with, I'm not a big catch-all category. If it's really wiring, of
All right,
course.
I'll
Well,
talk.
because I think there's like a report to me is actually like you're giving information regarding the data. This was like when Tony says data dump, it was just that. It was, here it is, that it was left for us to try to review and evaluate. So, is there a way to make it a little bit more concise so that we understand what the data is that we're
I'll
looking at?
have to talk to them.
And if you
I
have
don't
that,
know.
Tony, that might be a great starting point. That's
Yeah. I'll look and see. I have some old files and I might still have a copy of it. It was just a very simple one-page report. Kind of told you everything you wanted to know on one page. I don't think we need to know the details of where every address where something is happening and, if I wanted to data mine, I would
So,
data mine, but I
More
don't.
information,
I
but
don't.
not that much more information.
Yeah.
I will talk to the building department about what we can do. Okay?
Thank you.
I have a question.
What?
I'm really excited that the ground opening breaking ceremony is going to be on Monday, but unfortunately I can't make it because I have to work. Is there any way in the future when we're thinking about like ceremony things that we could maybe have it at a time of day that's not at work hours between 8 and 5, like a little bit after? If you're going to do a
Well, for a
weeknight?
groundbreaking, generally not, I can tell you.
No, not for groundbreaking, but the opening one.
We'll try to take into consideration for,
Okay.
no. I know you're
6
working
a.m.
early and busy day. I
Mhm.
understand that.
Want us to move it to 6 a.m.?
6 a.m., something,
I hear you, Kathy.
or-
I understand.
I wish
All right.
I could be there. Sorry. I can't.
Anything else, anyone? Right, any audience comments? Richard?
I was interested in
This is Richard Leskovic. He lives on Gates Mills Boulevard.
your background information on Earthland because of course they've been making a lot of changes. For the first time, they hired a new president about a year ago. They've been improving their nursing program, and from what I understand is they are solid. Now, the strategic partnership, of course, is the first step towards the merger, which is will happen. Now, as far as the Earthland name, I'll speculate that it will remain in some form. The reason is when universities merge, one of the things they have to do is keep the alumni who's donating happy. When Gates and Western Reserve merged, it became Gates Western Reserve because of that. And there was some very bad blood with the Alumni Association from Gates, which for a while got kicked off of the Gates campus, which eventually there was a reconciliation and everybody became happy and working together. But these mergers always have to take into account the alumni, and oftentimes that is not real smooth, so it'll be interesting. But the fact that the university is not gonna wait around and have problems like some of the other colleges, more liberal arts colleges have done is really a positive step. And the fact that they have a very, very attractive medical and nursing program, I'm sure is what attracted Gannon College to them.
I hope so. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
William Thompson, 30500 Providence. Thinking about the Gates Mills Trail, the extension. So it's great that everybody is, amenable to the notion. And as I'm sitting here, I'm counting on mentally counting the houses in my head. There's more people in the room by far than there are houses along there. So would we consider asking them? Right? Because I hear a lot of, I'm pretty sure they'll like this, or I'm pretty sure they won't like that. So, who'd be best equipped to speak for what they would like and not like? those people. And there's what, 10 houses, which I'm guessing we have their phone numbers and email addresses, so maybe we can form up a fair question, like, that if the, I'm making this up, that if the costs are reasonably comparable, perhaps a little bit less, something, which would you like? And just ask them, not promise that you're gonna go with what they say, but if they all say the thing that we didn't think they were gonna say, well, then at least tells you something, so we're not guessing. So
Fair comment,
that's the end of my own opinion.
fair comment. Anyone else? Vera?
To Vera Bar Savage, 29600 Shaker Boulevard. I just want to invite everybody. We're having a celebration of Lander Road. So I sent out notices, and if anybody wants one, I have a flyer here. It's going to be September 28th, which is a Saturday, at 11 a.m. So everybody's welcome to come and celebrate our first sidewalk in the city. Well, not actually the first sidewalk, but the first laying of the sidewalk for Lander Road. So, is anybody interested in getting a flyer?
No, they can get a flower from you at the end,
Okay.
okay? And thank you for your invitation for me to
Yes,
be
Mayor
there.
Rain's gonna speak.
That's very, very kind of you to invite me. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, with that said, I would entertain a motion to adjourn for an executive session to discuss with counsel pending or imminent litigation. There, following the executive session, there will not be public business conducted. We will simply go to terminate the public meeting. So could we have a motion for executive session, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Govic?
Break their
Mr. Gentili?
Executive session.
Yes.
Dr. Long?
Yes.
All right, we're past. We are adjourned to an executive session. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Kelsey's coming.
Oh, she is.
Yes, Donna Kelsey's gonna be there. Yeah.
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Alumni, Alco's friends.
He's gonna go down there.